Ready to go?
Yes.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Allendale Land Use Board, which formal action be taken on the items listed on the agenda and upon any other matters which may properly come before the Land Use Board. The requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied through posting on the public bulletin board in the municipal building, the borough website, and by publication in the Record on January 28th, 2023, with copies sent to the Ridgewood News. Certain agenda items will be open to the public for comment or testimony, and the board will advise the public when such matters are open for their comment or testimony. I'll ask you to join me in a salute to the flag, which is right here behind me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Right. First matter of business this evening is an oath of office for two new alternates joining the board, Jason Wazala and Greg Butler. And I think we're going to have a swearing in.
Yes, sir.
And I'll ask our attorney to swear you guys in.
Where do you want to do that? Wherever you like. Where would you like to? Or you could just stay at your seat.
Or yeah, to have them stand, maybe.
Yeah, stand. Okay. So, come on over.
Since they're on opposite ends.
Oh, wow. You want a photo op? Okay.
Let's go that way. I got it.
You could do Bible, no Bible, what would you do?
You should go in there. Bible's
fine. Put your right hand, please. Okay. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Greg Butler.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
And the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
That I will bear true faith. That I will bear true faith.
I will bear true faith.
And allegiance to the same.
And allegiance to the same.
And to the governments established in the United States.
Governments established in the United States.
And in this state.
And this state.
Under the authority of the people.
Under the authority of the people.
And that I will faithfully.
And I will faithfully.
Impartially and justly.
Impartially and justly.
Perform all the duties of Land Use Board alternate member.
All the duties of Land Use Board member.
Alternate member.
Alternate member.
Of the Land Use. Okay. Of the Land Use Board of the Borough of Allendale.
Land Use Board of the Borough of Allendale.
According to the best of my ability. So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
I will live on my hand up. I state your name.
Jason Wazala.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
And the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
That I will bear true faith.
That I will bear true faith.
And allegiance to the same.
And allegiance to the same.
And to the governments established in the United States.
And to the governments established in the United States.
And in this state.
And in this state.
Under the authority of the people.
Under the authority of the people.
And that I will faithfully.
And that I will faithfully.
Impartially. And justly perform. All the duties of Land Use Board alternate member.
All the duties of the Land Use Board alternate member.
Of the Land Use Board of the Borough of Allendale.
Of the Land Use Board of the Borough of Allendale.
According to the best of my ability.
According to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Maybe I'm missing it.
They need to sign and do they have that? Okay. You each have one to sign, so when you're done with that, I'll witness it.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll offer a warm welcome to our two alternate members. There is a requirement, though, that you need to take a certification test within an 18-month period from your start. I think some of it is offered online. I was also possibly going to ask Chris Spotter if possible, if he could maybe teach a session or something, or for any land use board member who wants to sort of refresh themselves. We've all gone through the test or whatever, but maybe Natalia can deliver the message back.
I will be happy to volunteer him.
I figured as much.
Perhaps. Chris Spotter is our land use attorney for those who remember.
Yeah, and I guess that's what he gets for not being here, right? I wonder what I'm going to get stuck with next month.
Maybe I'm not.
Wait, it can't be next month. It would have to be the month there.
Yes, true enough. Okay. So welcome to the board, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is the roll call for attendance, please.
Board Member Bergen.
Here.
Board Member Petrino is absent. Board Member Kistner.
Here.
Councilman Delawisio.
Here.
Board Member Dallo.
Here.
Vice Chairman Sirico.
Here.
Mayor Wasinski.
Here.
Chairman Quinn.
Here.
Jason Warzala.
Here.
Greg Butler.
Here. All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from February 15th, 2023, regular meeting. I had some edits that got circulated. I take it those were here for that meeting have all read them. If you have any changes, amendments, please state so. If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
So move, Sirico.
Thank you. Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second the motion, Delawisio.
Thanks, Joe. Any discussion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote.
Board Member Bergen.
Yes.
Board Member Kistner.
Yes.
Councilman Delawisio.
Yes.
Board Member Dallo.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Sirico.
Yes.
Mayor Wasinski.
Yes.
Chairman Quinn.
Yes. Okay, minutes are approved. Next matter is an application we heard last month, 2023-03. Applicant Craig and Courtney Cagney, 320 Park Avenue, block 2206, lot 1. Proposed construction of a new front covered porch, second floor addition, and addition of a dormer to the detached garage. And there were some variances associated with that. Joe, and I'll ask our attorney, Natalia, to sort of capture the essence of what that resolution says.
Sure. So this resolution 23-14, memorializes the approval from last month. As you stated, with regard to the applicants Craig and Courtney Cagney, they were seeking approval of variance relief for proposed addition and renovations to the premises located at 320 Park Avenue in the borough of Allendale. The plan sought specific approval to construct the addition and renovations to the existing dwelling, including a new covered front porch, second floor addition to the existing home, and addition and dormer to the existing detached garage. The application also sought variance relief for 2 front yard setbacks, accessory building heights, and accessory building encroachments on a corner lot. The Land Use Board considered the matter on February 15th, 2023. And approve the application subject to the conditions found on page 4. Page 5, excuse me. So they granted the approval and requested variance subject to the following conditions. 1, that all fees and assessments required by ordinances and due and owing to the Borough of Allendale for the site for professional review and approval of the applicant's plans shall be paid in full to the Borough of Allendale by the applicant. B, the applicant and professionals shall work with the borough engineer in the event that any field adjustments shall be required for the proper construction of the proposed improvements so as not to negatively impact any surrounding properties and to minimize and address any stormwater or drainage issues and comply with Mr. Vreeland's February 12, 2023 review letter. The applicant shall submit revised plans and landscape plans consistent with the testimony and to correct any deficiencies, errors in the submitted plans. Lastly, that the applicant shall prepare and submit an quote-unquote as-built survey plot and plan as a condition of issuance of the certificate of occupancy.
Thank you. Okay, would anybody like to propose a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Joe?
Second.
Second. Mayor Wasinski. Okay. Any discussion? None? We'll move to a vote.
Board Member Bergen.
Yes.
Board Member Kistner,
Yes.
Councilman Delavatio,
Yes.
Board Member Dallo,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Sirica,
Yes.
Mayor Wasinski,
Yes.
Chairman Quinn.
Yes. Okay, the motion carries. Yeah, I think I had that as well. Okay. Oh, but I hit that one.
Abstain.
Ah.
And abstains later.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No, that's good. I got your back. Don't worry.
All right. Next, the public hearings section of the meeting. We have a application at Land Use Board 2023-04, 115 West Crescent LLC. It's at 115 West Crescent Ave, Allendale, New Jersey, lot 910, lots 5 and 6, and it's a minor subdivision approval. And we have representation this evening?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Andrew Kohut, Kohut, of Wells, Jaworski, and Liebman, 12 Route 17 in Paramus, New Jersey. First of all, to the two gentlemen who were appointed, congratulations on their appointment. I'm here on behalf of 115 West Crescent LLC. The property address is 115 West Crescent Avenue, block 910, lots 5 and 6. The property is in the A residential zone district. Before I get into some of the particulars of the application itself, I just wanted to point out 115 West Crescent LLC, who is the owner of the property. The principals are third generation Allendale residents. I'll get into why I'm going over that in a second. The Shotanis family. One of the principals is Cindy Shotanis. She plans to make this raise the fourth generation here. I don't say that because they deserve special treatment because they've been here for 3 generations. I bring that up because they have a keen sense of the development of this town, of how it should be, how it should look, how it should feel, and they took that into serious consideration, the character of the neighborhood, when they came up with this plan. So this wasn't a willy-nilly application where they just said we want 3 lots because we want 3 lots. They carefully analyzed the situation and they think it makes sense. So that's the reason I just bring that up.
Okay.
Lots 5 and 6 currently as they currently consist are oversized lots. They are 31,911 square feet and 33,114 square feet respectively. They both have existing non-conforming lot widths of 100 feet and 101.56 feet respectively. Lot 5 also has 2 curb cuts on it currently. There are actually two curb cuts or driveways on the property itself. What the application is proposing to do is subdivide the property into 3 lots, none of those lots will exceed 24,754 square feet, but all will be a conforming lot size. You'll hear testimony in a little bit from Mr. Breigel on why that's important. There's case law that says one of the benefits to an application is bringing oversized lots more into conforming size with the zoning code and the surrounding neighborhood. So I'm bringing that up for that reason. There will be 3 non-conforming widths. Both lot 5 and 6 will be 93.28 feet. Lot 6.01, which will be the lot in the rear of the property, will have a lot width of 15 feet. I say that 15-foot lot width is really technical in nature, because when you look at lot 6.01 and you look at the buildable area of that lot, it's actually 178.84 feet wide by 122 feet deep. So in essence, the buildable area of lot 6.01 complies with the requirements for lot size in this zone. You'll see in the plan itself, it addresses all setbacks. It complies with all setbacks. We are not proposing any variances or any setbacks or any other bulk requirements in the code. Everything you see here complies with the code. Obviously, if the board chose to approve this application and someone wanted to obtain a variance from one of those conditions, they have to come back before this board and return that variance. But as of right now, all we are proposing is conforming houses on these properties, conforming coverages. You will hear a significant amount of planning testimony justifying these variances. You'll hear, I'm not going to get too in depth on it, but you'll hear favorable comparisons of lot widths in the area. They're consistent with the lot widths in the area. One of the things, and we agree with Mr. Snipes' report, flag lots really are the exception, not the rule. Okay, we readily admit that. We're not trying to, tell you that's wrong. What we do hope to prove to you and to justify to you is that in this particular situation, the exception is warranted. There's conditions in the surrounding neighborhood and for this property itself that allow for a flag lot in this situation. You will see in that testimony that in the surrounding neighborhood, there are numerous flag lots. And the other thing, as I said, you'll hear testimony about is that we are creating 3 lots that are more in conformity, lot size wise, with the surrounding neighborhood and the zoning code. And that's discussed as a benefit to an application, a positive aspect of an application. The case is the Kaufman case, Kaufmann, which you'll hear testimony about that from Mr. Greigel. Again, right now we're complying. Every other, besides the lot width variances, all other bulk requirements are being compliant. We're not proposing any other variances for this application. I have 2 witnesses here tonight. I have Thomas Miller, who is a licensed surveyor who prepared the subdivision plan, and I have Paul Greigel, who is a licensed planner who will provide planning testimonies justifying the variances in the project in general. Unless the board has any questions of myself, I'd like to call my first witness.
Before we do that, I just want to make sure we have the ability to proceed.
Yes, I've reviewed the affidavit of service and the affidavit of publication. They are all in order. So we have jurisdiction. We can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to have 2 witnesses, basically. Okay.
Mr. Thomas Miller. Take that one down. Mr. Miller, for the board.
I just have to swear him in. Yeah. If you could raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth throughout the course of this application?
I do.
Mr. Miller, for the board's edification, can you provide them with your professional and educational background?
Sure. So I hold starting with my most recent degree, I hold a MBA from Centenary University in Marketing and Finance. I hold a certificate in geomatics from Rutgers University, the Blaustein School of Planning Policy. I hold a bachelor degree from Rutgers University in natural resource management, actually forestry option. I'm a professional forester as well as a surveyor. I was qualified as a professional land surveyor in 1991 by the state of New Jersey. I was qualified as a professional planner, although I'm not going to provide any testimony with respect to planning tonight, just my surveying knowledge. In 1998, I was qualified as a New York professional land surveyor. In 2002, I was qualified as a professional land surveyor in the Commonwealth of Virginia, also in 2002. I've been practicing surveying in New Jersey for 41 years, started my career in 1979 with a company that some of you might know of, the Storch Engineers from Floral Park, New Jersey.
And your license is still in good standing?
All my licenses are in good standing.
I would submit Mr. Miller as an expert in field survey.
Okay, we'll accept.
Mr. Miller, we submitted a plan, an existing conditions map and a subdivision plan. Did you or someone under your supervision prepare those plans?
I, as well as my staff, under my direct supervision, prepared these plans.
And they're the same plans that were submitted as part of this application that are on the board right now?
Yes, they are.
Do you normally mark plans that have been submitted or by the application, or do you?
Typically we do.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll mark the boundary topography survey dated December 9th, 2022 as A1, and then we'll get to the next one.
Okay, why don't you this is the boundary and topographic survey document? Okay.
Why don't you go through with the board and give an orientation and current layout of the
Okay. As a New Jersey surveyor, I basically start with the deed that was vested title in the current owner, which that deed is recognized as the deed that was vested in 115 West Crescent LLC. We then did an on-the-ground survey of the property, which is considered the highest level of precedence that can be obtained when you're doing a land survey or is an on-the-ground survey. And when I prepare a survey, it is not just the local lot that I survey, but I actually survey more of the whole neighborhood, put together a mosaic of all of the properties in the neighborhood, so that in fact the lot is consistent with all of the evidence that we collect. Then the property is set, and it's my opinion that this is the location of the property as based on a preponderance of evidence that was found in the field by my field crews. And then drawn in the AutoCAD model, and what you see as a result on the survey is just the property in question. The property in question, we talked about two lots, lot 5 and lot 6. We also talked about the fact that the dividing lot is a little bit light on this particular print. It does run through the existing building. Okay, when we did the survey, we found that there is a considerable amount of landscaping buffer with evergreen trees around the outside of the property, as well as fencing around the property. We also found no evidence of easements or wetlands on the property.
So let's go back to the lots real quick. So you did the survey of the lots, and there are two lots. Lot 5 you surveyed is 31,911 square feet.
Yes.
Okay. And lot 6 is 33,114 square feet.
That's correct.
Okay. And also your survey revealed that there are non-conforming lot widths. Lot 5 is 100 feet.
Correct.
And lot 6 is 101.56 feet.
Correct.
Now you mentioned the existing dwelling, and you said the existing dwelling actually straddles both the property line, correct?
That is correct.
And as I had indicated, and I may have said lot 5, there are two existing curb cuts on one of the lots. Is that correct? Which lot is that?
That is correct. That would be this upper lot. And curb cuts exist here and here.
a question was brought up about tree removals. Do you see any tree removals being needed in order to effectuate this subdivision?
Not at this time, no.
And as far as you can tell, there are no wetlands that exist on this property?
That's correct.
Why don't you go through with the board now? Why don't we pull up the subdivision plan and go over what we're proposing?
Yeah, as you mentioned, lot 5 is 31,906 square feet. Lot 6 is 33,114.
Can we mark this, please?
Sure. A2. This is the subdivision plan, and it's last revised February 2023.
So overall, just speaking in generalities, the entire property is about 1.5 acres. Okay, so the current plan right now pretty much divides that property equally into thirds. Lot 5 being 20,094 square feet, lot 6 being 20,177 square feet, and lot 6.01 being 24,754 square feet. So each one of those would be, almost exactly the same, except for the fact that the lot 6.01 has the extra property that accesses the street.
Okay, and why don't you just show the board the access, if you could get up and demonstrate, show the board where they're providing the access to the rear lot.
So the rear lot 6.01, the access West Crescent Avenue, along this 15-foot strip, and back to the property.
And let's just go over the particulars of your plan with each of them. The lot 5, where the front, as far as frontage is concerned, we're proposing 93.28 feet, correct?
That's correct.
And for lot 6, same, 93.28 feet, correct?
That's correct.
And for lot 6.01, because of the access point to the rear of the property, that lot width is actually, it's going to be 15 feet.
15 feet. By definition of frontage alone.
And the reason it's almost apropos that there's an existing curb cut there to provide this access to the rear of the property.
Existing curb cut and an actual existing paved driveway that gives current access to part of the dwelling that's on this front lot. Yes.
Let's describe what I call the buildable area of the rear lot of the lot 6.01.
Okay.
Why don't you go over those calculations?
Sure. The buildable lot size is very consistent among the 3 lots. For the rear lot 6.01, you have a building envelope that's about 150 feet by 57 feet, which that's an average of the 2 sides and the 2 fronts. But calculated as a total square foot area, would be 8,536 square feet of buildable area for lot 6.01.
Okay, that's buildable area.
Yes.
But as far as the lot itself, the entire lot is, when I said it was 122 feet by 175.84 feet, was that accurate?
That is accurate, yes, for the whole lot.
And that total area in the rear of the property,
yes.
It totals 21,452 square feet.
Okay. 24,754 square feet. Lot 601.
That's the entire lot.
Yes.
But when you multiply 175.84 times 122, it's approximately 21,400.
Yes, because you're eliminating the drive.
Drive.
Yes,
you're eliminating drive.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. I'm just trying to show that the actual lot that's being built on, if that rectangular lot was fronting on a street, it would be a conforming lot.
Yes, it would, because it's 175 foot.
Now, and I want to make this point clear again, the board. we are demonstrating houses that can be built as of right, correct? We're not proposing any variance conditions related to any bulk requirements or any impervious coverages.
That is correct.
And obviously, if the board so chooses to approve this application, someone would need to apply to the building department to build a house and show that they comply with all the requirements.
Correct.
And if they don't, they have to come back before this board and obtain the variance.
Correct.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. You didn't mention whether the existing home was going to be demolished?
It will be.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes, it's scheduled to be demolished, yes.
Okay, and you stated before that flag lots is suboptimal, and this board has a very strong view on the suboptimization of flag lots. Now, there are some history here because the Calvary Church, which is near to this property, came before this board. Some of us are still here several years ago to subdivide their property. And there was extensive testimony over 9 or 10 months about water flows through that property that resulted in a detention basin on the church property that is quite substantial. And in fact, this board approved it, and then the county came in and said, make it even bigger. So this property sheds water from the celery farm all the way down, ultimately to the brook. So your comment about it's no wetlands is contrary to what this board has heard in detailed testimony by water experts from other firms, obviously, in another application. But just to sort of set the stage when you're saying around the neighborhood, that we know this board is pretty familiar with that and that property. So just going, basically, just I want to throw that out there, and then you can react to it any way you want.
I believe he was discussing just his property itself, not surrounding property.
Well, this property is in the midst of where this water sheds through. In fact, it's right in line with it. So, I mean, that's something that, I find incredulous that you're mentioning that there's no water there. But be that as may, you can proceed as you like. So I guess in a nutshell, what you're proposing is taking the existing lot, where there's 2 lots there now that are substandard in terms of the frontage, and make them even less conforming, and then throw a 15-foot driveway that leads to the back of the flag lot, in simplistic terms. Okay.
Yeah, but
that's what you're asking the board for approval.
I would agree, but the view, when you're looking at it from the street perspective, will look no different than what exists now.
Will, when there's 2 houses
There's
there.
2 houses there.
Absolutely.
Well, there's two lots there now.
But there's 1 house.
Right, but there's 2 lots. You could build 2 houses build a house on each lot. What I'm trying to say is there'll be 2 houses, and then there'll be a road leading to the back where the 3rd lot will be, which is what there's that same driveway exists now. So that's what I meant by that. Like the visual.
Okay. Board members have questions?
I just have a question. So you provided the tax assessment map, but it's not a current map. It doesn't show the development on the Calvary property. Do you have anything we can see that actually shows the new development that's currently there that would be close to the back of your new flag lot?
This was going to be used by Mr. Bravo.
Okay.
Copy of the file back on the Sunday night.
Oh,
Copy that later.
okay. Calvary.
Number copy there.
Thank you.
Not easy to read in that.
Yeah.
An idea of the location.
Yeah, well, passing that. Thank you. I didn't realize you had multiple. Okay, good.
Slide 5 is on there.
Slide 5 is okay.
Yeah.
Yep. You need one of these?
I got one.
There, we got an extra one too.
Yeah, we'll share. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Okay. Oh, yes. That's all. Okay. And T-Born. Right.
You're looking at this. That's,
These are flag all legally identified wetlands. One from what we spent a lot. Right, yeah. Months and months and months. They don't have. Right.
where's the reclusion?
That's out on Iverson. It's actually on the church property. Yeah. That was by design. All right.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Okay. I guess it's your testimony that, since we don't really see buildable lots here, I mean, you outlined the general parameters of the lot. But your testimony is that anybody who wanted to construct a home on any of these properties would have to come back before the board if they had a variance.
Correct.
If they didn't have a variance, they met all the meters, and then they could just
apply and do everything you need to do when you normally do.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
And the 15 foot side yard setbacks you're showing, how were those determined? Because I know the side yard setbacks are usually a factor of how big the building is on the site.
The side yard setbacks are direct offset of the property. They're all 15 feet from the property lines, as they are proposed.
Right. Because what I'm saying is when you're doing your zoning analysis, the side yard setback is a factor of how big the house is, the square footage of the house, the footprint. So that number it varies depending on the house.
It can grow.
Right.
Well, it can't grow if 15 is the minimum minimum setback requirement.
Okay.
And someone wanted to go 12 feet, let's say, they would have to come before this board and get a variance.
Okay, so you put the minimum in.
You put whatever is required to be,
okay.
Whatever meets the code.
And that's what the square footages that you listed on there are based on, that are permitted in your chart.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Any more members have other questions before I turn to the board's professionals?
Not right now.
I'd like to hear them. All right, well, maybe hear them, and then that may engender more questions. Thank you. So either Joe or Ed? You should be over it. So, okay, the first thing I want to address.
Excuse me, Joe, I think if there's a button on there, you have to hold that down.
Hold it?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
No problem.
Thank you.
That better? You see it on the recording?
I can't see anything, but.
I can hear you better.
So, the rear proposed lot 601 does contain mature trees, which would have to be considered during any zoning application for the removal of the trees. Under our current code, over a certain number of trees per year. So systematically clear cutting the lot, the buildable area of the lot. That area is also, you see a drainage pattern consistent with the surrounding area of kind of the triangle of West Crescent and over to the other side, and the area draining through this portion of the lot, the rears of the lots to both frontages. And seemingly down towards the church property and the prior subdivision. There is documented wetlands from that subdivision at the church property, and we anticipate, because of that, the presence of those wetlands, not necessarily presence of wetlands on this site, but the preponderance of a high groundwater table, which could lead to concerns with developing and constructing a basement on that property. So I think, looking at what the board's concerns have just been voiced, I'd say that any approval considered tonight, we would look at requirements of further investigation on that lot prior to filing the map and developing any of the front lots, to leave potentially the rear lot subdivided but not developable if it was the third lot to be built. Don't have any particular questions of the witness. I think it's really more about the suitability of the third lot and weighing that against the flag lot nature. And I think that's something we should defer, further discussion until we get a testimony from the planner.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Ed, your turn.
Yes, good evening. With regard to the layout of the lots, I know you indicated that there would be a future application made for a building on each one of the lots. With regard to the flag lot itself, is there any indication of, one of the things we noted in our report is the orientation of buildings when they relate to each other, especially for the flag lot condition. One of the things I was hoping you might provide is at least some indication of where the configuration of the home might be and or its orientation in lot 6.01. Is anything like that available at this point?
Address those comments.
Okay. Just for the chairman and the board's benefit, obviously in our report we indicated some of the concern is usually privacy. You have orientation of buildings commonly adjacent to each other side by side or rear to rear. In this situation, you're having a home behind another home. Right. So obviously that brings the question, what is being provided within the overall application to address that condition, that unusual condition that's being proposed? So that would be one thing that I would ask about. You had indicated that there are no wetlands on the property. Has anyone done any soil analysis, or was it just based on visual inspection of the property?
Right now, it's just based on visual inspection.
Okay. Because it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's sort of a low point on the property line of the lot itself where the water all drains to, but it seems to be a contained elevation, unless I'm mistaken. It's about 305. I think it's about along the southerly property line. Yeah, the southerly property line. You have your contour 306 and then the contour 305. It seems to be your lowest point in that area.
Actually, Ed, I think it's the 304 almost.
Even a 304, 304.9.
So yeah. Call it 305 then.
Yeah. So therefore, that was one of the things that piqued my interest in knowing the adjacency to the other conditions that this board has reviewed. Wherein through testimony, there was a concern about where the water was coming from, how the water was being dealt with. And in this situation, when we're creating a lot behind a lot, in my opinion, I'm really just offering my opinion as a planner, is making sure we're not creating a condition that can further exacerbate that drainage condition that I know the board is well aware of in that area. Also, I'm sure that maybe the planner might, excuse me, I'm sure the planner will probably address this, is how this rear flag lot relates to the other surrounding lots in the overall lay of the land, so that we can see where in fact there's orientation of other buildings, not just the buildings on this property, but just buildings off-site and how they relate to the specific flag lot. I think that's important to indicate for the board in order to make an informed decision.
Thank you.
That's all the questions.
And I suspect your planner will deal with that. Any other board questions after our professionals have stated comments? Before I open to the public? No? Okay, then I open to the public. I would comment that your comments are limited to the testimony you just heard from the gentleman who just provided that. Your name is safety. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thomas Miller.
Thomas, I'm sorry. Sorry, Thomas. Thomas Miller's testimony and that alone. There will be time at the end for you to comment more generally about this proposal. But for this point in time, if you have any comments, I'll recognize you, and you basically ask questions of the applicant's witness, Mr. Miller. So I'll open to the public. Sir, when you come up and state your name and address for the record.
James Onesius, 133 West Crest. I have a question on the rear.
And I'll ask you to talk loudly because you don't have a microphone unless you want to grab that one. So we can, yeah, it moves good. Okay. I'm not sure why we have to hold the button, but
better? Okay.
Yeah, you were picking you up a little bit better, yeah.
Okay. On the rear lot, I was a little confused. You're showing the all the way around that lot, 15-foot setbacks. Where is the actual front of the property on that back lot? Showing here is only 15 feet. Don't we need 35?
Front setback would be the area facing the line facing the shed. Yes. Right now we have that 15 feet. That's correct.
Isn't that supposed to be 35?
Down the front yard. Not on the street.
Front of the house.
All I have on this one.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't hear the answer though. So you're saying that is the front of the house where it's the 15 feet?
Yes.
That's considered the front yard setback, yes.
Right.
For the flag lot.
So it's 15 feet from so the front door is 15 feet from the backyard of the other house. Is that what you're saying?
We're going to let Mr. Rigel handle issues.
Okay. That's what it appears that way, and the testimony seemed to confirm that, but we'll hear more. Okay. Any other questions from the public? Ma'am, come up and state your name and address for the record as well.
Hold it in?
Yeah. I think,
Oh,
unfortunately.
constantly hold.
Sorry.
Okay. I can talk pretty loud though. Okay, my first, Margaret Onesius, wife of James Onesius, 133 Rear West Crescent Avenue. We are directly behind the proposed third house. It's going to be very close to our house because we are a non-conforming lot already. Where our house is at least 60. That age of our house is indeterminate. They don't know for sure how old that. It's at least 60 years old. And so it is totally non-conforming. Our back of our garage is directly on the property line. So building a house there is, even with their minimum setbacks, is going to be right on top of us. So, you know, unfortunately, you can't change. We can't change the way our house is.
But you need to ask questions.
Okay. Okay. Pertaining to the water problem, there is a huge water problem with that house. Sometimes
is there a question? Is there a question?
Question. What do you plan on doing about this? Our kids used to skate back there. It was a foot deep.
He's not a licensed engineer, he's a surveyor.
Okay.
So,
okay. Trees that I see behind my house would be within that 15. I can't imagine that no trees will be taken down. Is that for sure? There are, I don't know, about 6 trees back there that,
There seems to be on the drawing at least 1, 2, 5 or 6, maybe 7, 8
yeah,
trees that are in the so-called building envelope. So those would, your question is good in that, yeah, what trees would have to come down. I'm
Yeah.
not sure they're giving us that information because they're not giving us a building envelope at this point in time. But that would be definitely part of a question. And I have a similar concern.
yeah. And just, I want to make sure if this third lot is developed, where is I couldn't see the picture really, where is the proposed driveway to that house?
Seems like it'd be on the northerly.
So it would not be, I was concerned that it would be going right behind us, so that's good.
So yeah, it's the opposite side from where you're located. Okay.
I think that's it for now.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. The houses will be built long ways, so they will be narrow in the front, the 2 street side houses.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Because
We
that always looks very odd when a house is very long and narrow to fit the, the variances that they need for the width. It seems like they would have to be long and narrow. There's a house like that on Franklin Turnpike that really looks very odd.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any final board questions? Okay, move on to the next witness.
Thanks, Paul Greigel.
State your name, please.
Yes, Paul Greigel, last name spelled Grygiel.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, throughout the entire course of this application?
I do. Mr. Greigel, for the board's education, your professional and educational background? Yes, I'm a licensed professional planner in New Jersey. I have been since 1999. I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. That's a nationwide accreditation for people in my field. I have a master's degree in regional planning from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 1996. Bachelor of Arts in Urban Studies from Rutgers University in 1994. I've been the principal of Phillips Price Greigel Laney Hughes Planning and Real Estate Consultants. We are based in Hoboken, but my practice takes me throughout New Jersey and beyond. I've actually currently municipal planner for a number of municipalities throughout New Jersey, including 5 in Bergen County, as well as a couple of others. And I've been accepted as an expert planning witness by this board previously, as well as over 150 other planning and zoning boards throughout the state of New Jersey.
Okay, we'll accept.
Thank you. Mr. Greigel, you're familiar with the application materials?
Yes.
And you're familiar with with Allendale's zoning ordinances and master plan?
Yes, I reviewed them for this application.
And how they impact this application?
Yes.
Why don't you go through the board then with the same testimony you provide for that?
Certainly, and I do have an exhibit. I think we did show it briefly, but I don't think we marked it yet. No,
We did not mark it.
this one, so that'd be A3. A3. Aerial view taken by a drone from the representative of the applicant, showing the existing conditions on the subject properties and the surrounding area. So I think it's a useful starting point in terms of context. We recognize that we seek variance relief and are looking for a subdivision, but we're looking to set forth the basis for which that relief can be granted. So Exhibit A3 again shows north is to the bottom, south is to the top along West Crescent. So we have the 2 lots currently. Lots 5 and 6, they have a combined area of 65,025 square feet. So it's 1.5 acres in total, over 200 feet of frontage along West Crescent Avenue, and lot depth ranging from 321 to 383 feet. So these are 2
either on their own, and certainly combined, excessively large and deep lots.
Excuse me for a moment. Excuse me.
Yeah.
That photo from the drone. We were provided a photo that is not that. Unless I'm mistaken, somebody up here correct me. It's upside down? Is that what it is?
I think it's a reversed image.
Okay. I just want to be clear that we all know what we're looking at. Right.
Is that correct? It's a reverse image.
I want to be clear that we know what we're looking at.
Maybe I'm just gonna flip it over.
I just want to point out that there's no confusion.
That's it.
That's just from the other direction.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, but you're showing this, and you know,
Right,
we all have it. Okay. I just want to be clear
Right.
that everybody knows what they're looking at.
Right. We're aware that the board has that and want to show a different angle as well to try to.
Okay.
I would assume everyone on the board knows the site that's familiar with it, but
Yes,
we're trying to the record.
Okay. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry for
No, no problem at all. So again, it gives you give a sense of the size and certainly the depth of the property. We'll have a second exhibit momentarily, which goes into more detail on the lot in the surrounding area. So again, what we're dealing with here are two properties that are oversized for the zone. When they're combined in area, that's over 3 times the minimum required. But they are, again, deficient in lot width, as we mentioned. Currently, you have a 1.5-story dwelling that's in fair to poor condition. And related improvements, there are 2 site driveways we've heard. There was a third curb actually that existed until sometime in the past 15 or so years when there were improvements done to a neighboring property for the group home to the south. So that was, the curb was filled in, so to speak, but there actually was a driveway in that location as well. But what's most important, I think, for this application we'll turn to next is with regard to the context and the surrounding area. That we're dealing with a very unique street and lot pattern, including a number of cul-de-sacs and flag lots. So for this exhibit A4, so I represent the applicant with my direct input. We collaborated by reviewing tax maps and the widths of properties in the area, identifying the existing flag lots, and showing it within the let me mark it for you. A4. And the title is Sufficient Lot Width in the A Zone. Can you say that again? Sufficient lot widths in the A Zone. And the reason is simply because we want to stick to the focus of the same zone district in which we're located. So you get beyond there, you have different requirements.
Okay, we don't have that.
Yeah, we don't have it.
It's an exhibit. Just we provided it as an exhibit, but it wasn't submitted.
Okay, so it wasn't submitted.
No,
Okay.
no, that's why we marked it.
Okay.
Yes. It's, turn it more up. Thank you. And so it's based on, again, tax maps available on the borough's website, with the exception that we actually filled in the Couch Court subdivision. So it's oriented, the red hatched property with the red boundaries is the subject property, and then the Lutheran church next door, and then Couch Court's kind of drawn in to show the lots that are in there.
Okay.
To get a sense of the up-to-date conditions
Right,
on the ground.
right.
Mm-hmm. And the color coding, anything that's in the yellow color are lots in the vicinity with sufficient widths that are less than the minimum required. We also have the orange color are existing flag lots or ones that have a right-of-way type situation, but that would be similar to what's being proposed. And includes a neighboring property as well as with 7 others within this general area. And I think, part of the issue is this part of the municipality, it's due to the angle of Crescent Avenue and Franklin Turnpike, as well as you have the public service right-of-way cutting through there, the former right-of-way. It's not a typical rectangular grid pattern of lots. That's part of the reason we show this. I'm sure you understand that already, but just to make it clear for the record, that this is not wasn't platted out with line of streets like a grid pattern in New York City or something. It has a very unique pattern, a unique arrangement in the surrounding area. Just in terms of land uses, you have other land uses, including the church a couple doors down, the group home directly to the south, the Savini restaurant on the opposite side of the street.
Right.
So as far as the background, That's the situation we have now. And now I'm going to turn towards what we're proposing. Again, I won't recap the entire proposal, but essentially we have two lots with frontages proposed of 93 feet along West Crescent and the one with the 15 feet. The lot areas, again, would all exceed the minimum required for the A residential zone, ranging between 20,094 square feet and 24,754 square feet. So with regard to bulk requirements, as was mentioned, I'm not going to keep rehashing this. We meet every standard or will meet standards for coverage, for setbacks, et cetera. We know we're showing a footprint that shows a very wider dimension. The applicants for any future homes on these properties would have to comply, and they'd be limited by coverage. So for example, you can't just build out to that line that we're showing as the building footprint. You have other limitations in play. So turning to the variance proofs, the applicant for lot width variances or any type of C variance needs to demonstrate certain things. We can either show a hardship, a C1 variance. We're not saying that here, even though we do have a very unique situation with a large and deep lot. Instead, it's the C2 criteria. The board probably has heard this, maybe some of you have not. Under municipal land use law, this is a section 70C2, essentially outlining that the benefits of zoning would be advanced by providing for this proposal and that the substantially outweighing the detriments, and that the purposes of zoning would be advanced as well by the application. You also need to demonstrate there's no substantial negative impacts on the public good and on the master plan or zoning ordinance. In this case, first, that positive criteria about the benefits outweighing the detriments. In this case, I do believe they would. First, we are dealing with lots that are out of character with the surrounding area in terms of their size and depth currently. So there'd be benefits, I believe, from subdividing to match the pattern that's been set in place in the area. So for example, you draw a line right through from the neighboring property, from the folks who spoke before, to the lots to the north, the depths of the properties are already roughly where we're proposing that line. That was part of the thinking of this proposal. That's along West Crescent. In addition, you have not just Couch Court, which I was talking about, the new subdivision, which has lots similar in size and orientation, but also to the rear, off the Franklin Turnpike. So there's a question, for example, about the orientation of homes. Frankly, it's literally all over the map here. You have homes facing towards the east. You've got a number facing to the west. You have lots facing south off of Couch Court. You have lots facing south off of Nadler Court, facing north off Nadler Court. So you really...
But they're facing the streets, though.
Yeah. They're facing streets, but in some cases, so for example, I can try to go through it directly, but in Couch Court, for example, you have a lot facing Ivers Road, which has the side of a house in the rear facing it. Even though it's not a street, you have a similar arrangement. So the point is that it's not, again, house, all side by side here.
No, okay. That's the point you're trying to make.
Correct.
Okay.
We understand that, again, it's typically more on a street pattern, but there are other flag lots nearby. In terms of what we're proposing, we're establishing lots of more in character of the surrounding area in terms of the size, because there's coverage is what dictates the house size. So if you were to have two lots here, again, we have two lots existing, two homes, right, they would most likely be much larger than what exists in the surrounding area. You'd be allowed to build larger homes. We believe there'd be less conforming with the pattern of lot sizes and house sizes in the surrounding area. Again, we have a number of lots nearby already that are deficient in terms of lot width and are smaller than what was typically expected for the A zone, as well as number of flag lots. So I think proposing this arrangement on this particular property essentially fills in the lot pattern that you see within this particular block bounded by Ivers, Crescent, and Franklin Turnpike. You really, again, have most of that lot pattern set in place, including a recent subdivision, as well as an older subdivision and other, older cul-de-sac and other subdivisions in the past. So I think that would be consistent with that Kaufman case, which Mr. Kohut mentioned, a better zoning alternative than strict compliance to require a lot, really have to be one lot of sufficient width. You have two lots now that are slightly deficient. We're proposing three, but again, in a density that would be very compatible with the surrounding area. So I think for those reasons, the positive criteria can't be met to allow for three lots on this property. With the arrangement we're proposing, we'd be promoting the general public welfare by providing for appropriate residential densities and a lot pattern that's consistent with the surrounding area, That's purpose A of the land use law. Purpose E, promoting establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations. Again, filling in the lot pattern for the area. And purpose G, providing sufficient space and appropriate locations for residential and other uses. As to what the negative criteria, this is the other aspect, so I'm sure the neighbors are concerned, the board's concerned about this. We need to demonstrate no substantial detriments to the public good from the subdivision. In my opinion, as a planner, there'd be nothing substantial in terms of these impacts. Again, we're dealing with deviations relating only to the lot widths. We have an existing driveway today, a second driveway, and we had a third driveway previously. There'd be 3 driveways proposed. Again, you have just on the neighboring property, a very similar, almost the exact same situation with the neighboring lot to the south in terms of having an access point that's less than required from West Crescent Avenue to get back to the property. And again, there's other examples in the surrounding area of this. Really, the question comes down to whether it's 2 or 3 lots here. And even the 2 lots, if they were only permitted 2 houses here, would not most likely not be at the front of the property. You'd think they might be towards the rear anyway, just in terms of trying to provide for a little more setback from the street. Either way, there's plenty of room within those building footprints to provide for houses that would be of a consistent size with the neighborhood. I think also, given the conditions of the property today, there'd be a substantial upgrade in appearance. We can also address with your feedback and recommendations with regard to whether it's landscaping, screening, dry wells, or other measures to deal with stormwater runoff. All these upgrades to address problems that exist already. I would note there actually is substantial screening along the sides of the property currently, which was put in either on neighboring properties or on ours in response to the development that's happened in the vicinity. I think the folks that now the court weren't excited to look at the existing house that's on this property, so there's actually substantial screening there as well as on other properties nearby. So I think there'll be no substantial negative impacts in terms of the public good with regard to the proposal. Lastly, with regard to the master plan and zoning ordinance impacts, again, we have a number of factors we've talked about that distinguish this property from most in the surrounding area. The depth is really excessive compared to the majority of lots in the neighboring, lots in the surrounding area as a whole. We're providing for densities that are similar to what exists in the surrounding area, and we would have conditions that would be similar in terms of being flag lots. For example, again, the neighboring one, the major land up to the north. East of the property, you have off of the access road to the multifamily development, 2 lots off a private right-of-way, stacked up against each other. We have another one off Franklin Turnpike near Pittis Avenue, where there's a house in the back of another house. Just again, so it's not to say we were automatically granted the ability to do this, but just to say that this is a location where we have other properties like this in terms of their setup. And again, I mentioned the Couch Court subdivision. You actually have a similar arrangement, albeit on a public street. That's a cul-de-sac.
Right.
So I think, in summary, with regard to the potential negative impacts on the master plan and zoning ordinance, we're again factoring in the specific conditions of this property, and we recognize that, even though we don't meet the widths at the street for all 3 of the lots, that we would be providing a pattern that's similar to existing conditions in the area, and it also would comply with all their bulk standards. So I think there'd be no substantial negative impacts with regard to master plan and zoning efforts.
And even if those deficient lot widths, we could build homes that are compatible with the area that meet the standard within the neighborhood, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's plenty of room. And again, you'd have a similar situation even with the existing lots today in terms of the footprint. It'd be the difference of 7.5 feet if you didn't have that
Right.
new lot there. So these similar sized houses being viewed from the street. So again, we recognize it's not a easy request to make. It's not something this board looks favorably on generally, but we do believe in this case there are some very specific circumstances that warrant it. There were concerns raised by Mr. Snikes in his letter. If I can maybe jump to some of those emergency services, for example.
Go ahead.
That's always a concern with flag lots. I think, again, no different than you have on some of these other neighboring properties, but adequate signage with the address on there, for example, would help with that. I mean, there's also no guarantee a house on this lot or other lots isn't set back behind trees or not visible from the street anyway. So it's not that you're always guaranteed to have a view. It's not like a police officer driving by or fire truck sees a fire or an emergency there. Not to make light of it, but essentially you have the ability to identify properties through signage and where the driveway is located on the property. So again, I think it'd be similar to at the end of a cul-de-sac or at the end of a long driveway. As far as the orientation of the house, obviously it's not been decided yet. Most likely, given the driveway at the north end, you'd have a garage facing that way, potentially even the front of the house facing towards the north. That's yet to be determined.
Right.
There's a lot of room to work with back there. It's a very large piece in the rear of the property. But, again, if there's concerns about distance to the neighboring lots, certainly the board, can maybe impose conditions. We can add additional screening, that type of thing along those property lines. With that, I conclude my direct testimony. I'm sure there'll be questions. I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess from his historical point of view, when Calvary Church came to us, they had originally proposed a flag lot with a rather huge house. Mm-hmm. And we told them that maybe they should reconsider that. They reconsidered and came back with 3 homes and put a road in, Couch Court. So essentially, that was so right in that area alone, we asked that a flag lot not exist. So I'm just giving you a little history, and we heard a whole year's worth of testimony on the putting in the Couch Court and the water flows, and it was a lengthy process to get to approval. But it eventually got approved with 3 houses and a cul-de-sac put in there. So it's sort of a little historical perspective that I can remember. Maybe other board members were here. Not all of them. There's only got several of us left. So that's just that. I guess my feel or my view, or maybe I'll ask the planner that if you demolish the existing house, have considered the 2 lots, I would think that people who wanted to live there would want to have the house, I think you stated it, set back a little bit more, and then so they could use the rears of their properties as some quiet space away from a busy West Crescent Avenue. That kind of makes sense to me. Any thoughts of that on that in terms of?
That would make sense. I would concur, but
and you certainly have plenty of depth to do that.
Right, but even with the proposed subdivision, there's more than enough depth for a house in there and a yard, even if you're just set back. It's a 35-foot front yard shown, double that to 70, 75 feet. Even there, the house would be just back behind where the existing home is, for example. And that leaves, I have a scale handy, but it looks like another 75, 80 feet in the rear of a compliant house in that location. So it's not like it's, I'll put this way, it's not like it's something they're shoehorning in a house and it's going to be right up against the rear lot, setback line. And even if it were, again, that's 50 feet. It's a pretty substantial depth.
Right, but
15. So
we're going from 2 to 3. So that's to me that's a sense of shoehorning.
Again, given the lots, 20,000 plus square feet, lot at 24.
I know they're conforming.
There's a lot of room there to do that. Right. So I get the concern, why not just 2? But again, seems to make sense. If you literally look at the pattern lines on the map.
2 with deep backyards.
Right across. You'd again be filling in the gap essentially along West Crescent with the roughly exact same lot depths. Because they're roughly exact doesn't make sense, but essentially the same lot depths for each of those properties lined up along there.
Yeah, I'm not so keen on filling gaps.
Yep.
Question. The question the survey couldn't answer, and the planner answered. The proposed lot 601. So the 8 or 9, 10 trees that show in the photo will be getting clear cut to build this 3rd home, right?
Well, that's not the ones that are shown there. Well, let's show the photo, but the house, just so it's clear, would not fill the entire building envelope. So they would have to come in, and as was mentioned, there's restrictions, for our ordinance that deals with clear cutting. You couldn't just clear cut everything and say we're going to make this whole area grass and the house. But unfortunately, that's something we just don't have the information tonight to show you a house that would be in the exact location. That'd be reasonable. Yeah, the applicants, are from town. They understand this. I don't think they're looking to do something where you clear cut the rear of the property just for the sake of it.
Well, I think the concern there is the clear cut is one of them, but the second that it is a low level and there is a lot of just flooding in general in the whole town recently. So the wetlands being there as well as clear cutting and as well as being low elevation.
That's understandable, but again, we've heard that's existing. We certainly acknowledge that, and we'll need to deal with it. Whether it's the 3rd house in the rear or the two houses that are further back, they're gonna have that same issue regardless of one.
Greater
Coverage,
impervious
yeah.
coverage too.
The other thing, the issue is coverage is a percentage. So if you have two houses, they could be much larger and cover the same amount of area. Literally, if you did the math on it in terms of the impervious coverage and the building coverage, it's not a sliding scale.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So while I agree with you that there are flag lots that exist, I mean, in my opinion, a flag lot is kind of a mistake. So from a planning perspective, when you're dealing with a piece of property like you have there, and it's basically a clean slate, I don't agree that it's a benefit to put in another mistake, another flag lot. Can you just explain again, because I don't agree with your benefits to the public of why a flag lot is really a benefit when the ones that are there, I mean, if they could be eliminated, we would love to have them eliminated.
Sure, that's understandable. But the view is it's based on a court case which talks about this, that Kaufman case and others, that you sometimes have a pattern of lot sizes and house sizes in an area, and if you are requiring someone to comply just for the sake of a measurement that's out of whack with the existing conditions, there's actually benefits to having more similarly sized lots and homes in the vicinity, even if they have the access that's a bit different than some of the other ones. That's where I'm coming from. You may not agree with that, obviously. That's something that is up to debate, but
sure,
it's based upon that principle of trying to bring closer to conformity with what really exists versus what's a zone line. And again, I didn't really go through this detail, but there's area around here over roughly half the lots, if not more, are deficient with regard to width as well. So you have an area where the zoning really doesn't match what's on the ground.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of my problem. So I haven't been on this board for many, many years. The vast majority of the lots in Allendale are non-conforming.
Right. Yep.
To create additional non-conformities just doesn't make sense from a planning perspective. Now, I'm not a professional planner, so like I said, it's my opinion, but I just I don't understand how it would be a benefit in modern times. It's like you're going backwards. So you're going to take pieces of property and you're going to try to chop them up to make them conform. That just, I understand where you're coming from, and I don't agree that that's a benefit, but again, that's my opinion. Another question I had, and it's a kind of another disagreement. So I know you mentioned a little bit about emergency services being able to get to the back. Unfortunately, I had a neighbor who had a fire who lost a loved one, and I had to watch that. And the entire street was filled with emergency vehicles to the point where you couldn't walk. And that's a street. God forbid there was ever a fire in a flag lot back here. How would emergency services ever get to that?
It'd be no different, frankly, than a deep driveway on a property, even on this potential property or in the vicinity. I'm not a fire expert, but I've been doing this 27 years at this point, and I've heard enough testimony on this that you're not going to park your expensive machine or try to drive it down a small driveway and pull up right to a burning building. It's going to be parked on the street, as you suggested, run the hoses down there. Again, you can take that testimony for what it's worth as far as my expert opinion, but that's just what I've heard. So call it hearsay if you want, but that's the reality of how it's dealt with, whether it's that lot with a 15-foot right of driveway or even the existing lots or any lot. The neighboring properties to the north or south would have a similar situation. It's not easy, especially on a busy road. We get that, but that's. I don't think this situation is going to be any different than what exists, on any of the neighboring properties. You're not going to drive a fire truck, for example, into lot 7 or 8 there, just in the north there. You'll park on the street as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, I agree in principle what you said. I mean, just to play devil's advocate, I mean, if the house was set back, the truck could drive on the grass. Mm-hmm. In this instance, he'd have to drive through the 2 front houses to get to the back. Mm-hmm.
That's a fair point as far as that's the case of how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, God forbid it. Unfortunately, I had to witness that, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. And the whole community kind of felt that last year. So
I understand. And that's a big consideration that this board has taken into consideration in multiple applications before this. I mean, as the chairman pointed out, we spent a lot of time on couch court, a lot. And the original proposals, I mean, we had to work through this. And just as the mayor pointed out too, I have a big concern about the water as well. So I don't want to make a situation with a flag lot from an emergency standpoint, but I'm also concerned about the water, as Linsky said. I can't. It was at least a year. Yeah. Okay. I mean, there were so many studies that were done on this thing. So this board excuse me, this board has a lot of history with that particular area with all that water
As far as
coming.
the board is concerned, I agree with you, but that same type of documentation that we provided if the board chose to approve the subdivision when they went to go build a house. They have to provide the proper drainage to make sure that it's not, it doesn't leave the property. So that same analysis is going to be done.
Agreed.
Respectfully, what's in front of us tonight is the consideration of creating a lot that would have adequate tax value in the municipality and would be buildable. So while we won't address the buildability of the exact application in front of the zoning officer until it's submitted for that third lot, our board has to consider the value of the lot they're creating by the subdivision for its potential to be developed.
So I guess what he's saying, this is like phase one, right? So we don't want to get to phase two where we can't build it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you mean by value. If you mean monetary value, that's not what
no,
that's not a consideration.
Value to develop a home characteristic of the zone that can be built, not on paper can be drafted as lot lines, but that the lot you're creating has the true potential to be developed for its intent. If the intent can't be realized, then there's no necessity for the board to create the lot with an approval. So there's the planning side of it, and then there's an engineering side of it. The engineering side of it can't be met, then creating the lot is not necessary until the development of the lot.
I mean, if that would be the board's stance, there's preliminary and finals that could be determined.
I have another question. So if you could just please go over again the benefit. So when I look at a benefit to the public, right, I think about the neighboring lots. So looking at your Google Earth or your drone footage, I mean, there's some pretty substantial homes right at the back portion of that property, as well as the flag lot right next to it. So just please explain again what you would consider the public benefit to putting a third house, potentially, I know you're not proposing that now, but a third house in the back where currently it would face three other additional homes. I mean, what's the benefit to them? What's the benefit to the surrounding lots?
Utilizing the property consistent with the pattern that's been established in the area. So you have, again, a few years ago, you didn't see all these new houses here. 20 or 30 years ago, you had just a number of larger lots like this. But what's happened is the gaps have been filled in. I know the chairman didn't like that term, but where you've had additional houses built of a consistent size with the surrounding area, what the applicant's proposing, I think it actually just helps show that again, you have lots that are facing the neighboring property owners who are here. They're looking at the rear of a dwelling over on Couch Court. You have the side of a dwelling over there. Frankly, I think having another house, first of all, there's the benefit of removing the existing, let's not forget the existing condition being improved. We think that's obviously a benefit either way, however you develop this property. That's one of the overall benefits. The drainage was not going to be improved if nothing happens here. So if we build houses, we'll have to deal with it. And again, I just think from a planning point of view, the size of the lots would be a lot more, would be right in line with what exists in terms of widths and areas in the area. You may not agree again. We understand that we may have different opinions on that. That's where I'm offering as far as the public benefits of improving this property with dwellings that are more in keeping with the size, the character of what's been established around them.
Well, and I appreciate your opinion. And, I try to be very open to listening to everybody's side when I consider what's in my own head. I just, like I said, I just have some concern of how that back lot would really benefit the public. Now, I understand your point. In my mind, I just don't see how that's a benefit when it comes to, and I forget who said it earlier, about a privacy issue, as well as, putting something there that's really obtrusive. And maybe if you're going to leave the two lots and put a swimming pool or something back there, that's different. But now you're talking about a home with a family and a garage and things that I'm sure these people in the back never envisioned would ever be there. So that's
again,
that's my
from that point of view. I just would say this though, that there's no guarantee. This board doesn't dictate where a house would go. Let's just don't set two lot subdivision.
You're right.
Both houses can be pushed right there. You'd have two houses back there. Maybe the sideways houses that are so out of character allegedly with the area could be there. Again, I'm not trying to say that threatening. I'm just saying there's no guarantee. We're proposing something that as far as a lot pattern, lot arrangement would actually have limited to one dwelling back there. I mean, again, without absent, making a condition that the house can't be within a certain distance of the rear property line, there's no way to say you wouldn't have two homes in the rear of the property with a two-lot subdivision.
Provided within the rear setbacks and everything, sure.
You'd have the setbacks, of course, but you'd have development back there. So I understand the concern, but I think again, this is trying to actually tell you up front what we're proposing, that so it's clear to those neighbors and anyone else what's on the table.
No, I appreciate that. Again, I'm looking at it from a benefit, analysis. I just have one more question and then I'll shut up.
No, keep going.
You got the floor.
Yeah.
Got the floor. Well, what the hell is my question now?
Throw them all.
Forgot my question.
I'll be here if it comes up again. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm sure there'll be more.
Oh, it's just there too. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sure it'll come back.
Okay.
Any question?
Sure, John, go ahead.
So earlier on, we were talking about, the back lot and the 15-foot setback as it relates to the rear yard setback of the two front lots. There is, we don't know how the orientation of the potential home could be built on that lot. You have 3 setbacks at 15. So, but a rear setback at 50, so you're suggesting it's going to face West Crescent, that back lot. Am I correct?
Most likely, although the access at the very least would be probably to the north, so it's the side facing, if you will, as far as the garage is, essentially from a driveway
Side
coming
facing
in.
the driveway that long driveway coming in.
Yeah, driveway coming
but,
in.
But the front of the house would face the back of the other two lots up front on Crescent.
Yes.
Is that how it's being proposed?
Right now, there's nothing proposed as far as, again, it's just more looking at logically as how it would fit on in that building.
Well, you're proposing it really because you have your setback of 50 in the back, so you're saying that your rear setback, right?
Yes.
So then
have to comply with that.
Then it would have to be your front.
Yeah. Again, it could be designed in a way that has multiple fronts. Some houses that are on corner, on cul-de-sacs over there are a little more open to different sides. But yes, generally speaking, the rear is facing
right. So we're
towards
to deal with what's in front of us, and you're suggesting that this particular lot, the front of this house for this lot would have to be facing West Crescent, the back of the two lots of front.
Similar to other houses near, yes, that's correct. However, yes, that again based on our discussions, our initial thoughts on it, without absent having a house design that shows that.
Question again, just like what the board has, obviously there's some precedent, there's some flag lots in this A zone area. How recent are they?
They're not.
They're not recent.
No. Those homes predate the zoning,
right?
By and large. So
any
place
that's why we spent so much time.
We don't like flag lots.
Right.
I'll just put it out there.
Yeah. I mean, John, that's why I made the comment earlier. We spent a year with this.
Right.
Okay. And it was a year. Okay. Trying to prevent, I don't want to say prevent, but that we took a course, looked at couch for. Ron, right. I think you remember. It was before you.
Yeah. I inherited.
There you go. So.
Yeah, they went through the expense of putting a road in.
Right.
To get ultimately three houses. Out of it, so there was economic benefit to them that way. But the first concept that he came to us was a flag lot with a rather large home taking up all of that back property of the church, and we told them to rethink it because it wasn't going to go, and they did ultimately.
It's like we could potentially exacerbate.
Yeah, I mean that's and again it begs the question of anybody who has a deep property. wants to subdivide their property and put a house behind them.
I was just to say in response again, I did mention before, so couch court's the closest example where you have it's a corner lot situation, so you often will have that where it's a side facing a rear. It's not certainly not unheard of to have that situation. Right, so we understand it's a concern, but it's it's not something that's out of the ordinary and can be dealt with.
But they're sitting on a street. It's not a long driveway in and basically a flag.
I'm not sure from a point of view of the impact if the distance is the same, whether street makes a difference or not, but I get where you're coming from. That's a different
to this
situation.
board, I think it does. At least to this gentleman on this board, it certainly does.
I understand.
Or board, any other questions from board members? I'll turn it over to our professionals to also ask their questions before I open to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to make sure I'm pressing the right button. In your testimony, you had indicated that the lot is 3 times the area required in the zone. That's the consolidated 2 lots, correct?
That's the area of the overall, correct. Exactly.
But that the 2 lots are not 3 times.
No, that's fair to point. Yes, that's. Okay. I'm sorry if it didn't come out that way. Right, they're obviously about 1.5 times each. Doing that math, right? Over 1.5 times each.
Okay, so they're closer to the minimum requirement than the overall lot area, correct?
They're significantly over, but certainly closer, obviously closer.
Bear with me. In your overall analysis of the overall, I didn't quite understand what the black line meant on the exhibit that you have. Is that the A zone district?
Yes, it's actually a dark blue. So those black
okay, sorry, from this.
That's from exactly. So for the records clear later. That's the outlines of this portion of the A zone district.
Okay, and why did you look at that larger area compared to what's more proximate to this proposal?
It came down to just drawing the line of the zone. Typically, when I draw a vicinity map, you want to make sure it's in the same zone district. When I started plotting it out, it just kind of picked up a larger area, so I thought it made sense to go to look there. It wasn't trying to do anything more than that. Is that, you can easily say 200 feet. I think I'd be a little too tight. Is it 500 feet? Is it whatever? It just was more that the zone seemed to be within a reasonable distance.
In looking at the block itself, that where the proposed property is, how would you characterize the lot areas in and around that area?
Another calculation, like the area. I showed the widths, so we're talking about just between Ivor up to the end of the A zone.
Is 30,000 square feet out of character, that area?
I don't have the exact numbers. It's certainly not in character with the directly adjacent properties facing on Crescent. If you were to look at some on other streets, interior lots, maybe it'd be closer or around 30,000. That's correct. I just don't have the numbers on the exact comparison.
Understood. In looking at the arrangement of road patterns, as you indicated, this is not your typical grid pattern. When you have those sort of configurations from a planning standpoint, you sometimes end up with lots that are larger or have somewhat irregular configurations. Would you agree?
Well, they may be larger, but certainly just because the angles alone, you'll have irregular angles. And here, adding in two cul-de-sacs in there, that actually impacts even further that you have a number of trapezoidal lots, houses facing different directions than would if you were to lining them up in a rectangular pattern. Okay. A little of everything here.
In the proposal for the flag lot, the frontage is essentially 15 feet wide. How does that compare with the overall zone plan's minimum width from a percentage standpoint? I think we provided it in our review. It's about 18 or 19%.
I don't know the exact number I don't have in front of me, but that would be 15 divided by 115. Yeah, roughly over 10%.
It's about 87% less than, I'm sorry, about 13% of the overall requirement.
The width when you're measuring at the street, that's correct.
Correct. Okay.
That's just based on the technical and the ordinance, obviously, where you measure it.
Don't you find that substantially out of character with the intent of the zoning ordinance?
If you were just to say the lot was 15 feet wide for its entire depth, yes. But this is a lot that widens out to a much greater dimension. So I think that needs to be considered as well. If you're only focusing on one part of it, yes, it's certainly, it's out of character just because it's certainly a lot less than the minimum required.
You're looking at the flag lot itself and its configuration. When you go towards the rear, after the stem or the post of the flag, then it widens out to the larger portion of the lot. You have a 15-foot side yard setback there, as well as a 15-foot side yard setback adjacent to it, and then a 35-foot rear yard setback on the opposite side. I didn't quite do the dimensioning, but what is the width of the buildable area in that area? Is that something that could be measured? What I'm after is that, wouldn't it then drive the building layouts in a more typical arrangement to have the building facing the adjacent two lots than having it facing towards the driveway proposed for the flag lot, because of that dimension that's in that area?
Well, to get the surveyor, I'm sure, has the dimensions we can provide it.
It's almost the lot configuration driving the orientation of the home.
So that dimension you asked for was 149.75 feet. That's based on the surveyor's numbers.
Is that the actual buildable area? I don't believe that.
Oh, well, that's just within the 2 15-foot side yard setbacks. The dimension, is that, we're looking for the dimension of that?
Yeah, between the 15 and the 35-foot setback.
Well, we can also do the math and subtract 30 from roughly 175, so 145. It widens out a bit. So that would seem, in my head, that sounds about right. Somewhere over 145 to 150 feet. And then you have a depth of...
Yeah, I'm talking about the width of the building envelope at that stand. About 55 feet in that area.
Oh, the depth.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, that's 57.04 feet there.
But it's much wider in the other direction, so chances
That was the
are,
number I mentioned. I'm sorry, yes, that's right.
without the board knowing, if they were to approve this, there's no way of knowing exactly which way the house would be oriented.
At this time, no, continue preliminary and final, potentially that could be a way to do that, or as a condition. Again, something we'll have to discuss. There's been a lot of questions raised. I think the applicant would like to discuss, amongst ourselves as to how to address them, but I'm sure that would be one.
Yeah, I'm just offering that because from a planning standpoint, as you had indicated, and I believe you might agree with me, correct me if I'm wrong, we try to avoid flag lots because they create these conditions. Did you have any objections to my comments of what I was raising as far as concerns?
No, generally that's the case. Sometimes master plans even talk about that. Allendale doesn't.
Right.
Maybe it's because there's a condition. I wasn't involved in writing that. I can't say why, but that is, there's certain things that are principles that are you try to adhere to, and that's one of them.
Okay. And so in order to address those concerns, we would need to know a little bit more about the way the building's configured and or any of the mitigating factors to avoid the negatives that come to play as a result of a flag lot condition.
Correct. So that's again where the screening I think would come into play.
Right.
The location of a driveway, which was a question that was asked. The orientation of the house. Again, stormwater runoff and drainage. Tree removal, those are type of things. The board's asking all these questions. You're asking them. They are, I think, all legitimate ones to be considered, and we would, take into account as we move forward.
Okay. I think a lot of my questions were asked before as well. I think that's all the questions I have at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Excuse me, I just remembered my last question. I forgot mine in the middle. Just regarding the master plan, I know you had indicated that you don't find there's any impact to the intent and purpose of the master plan. I did provide goal number 1 on page 5 of our report, where I'll read the specific section. It says establishing and maintaining zone districts and use, lot bulk, and intensity of use regulations based on existing neighborhood development patterns and good design practices. Can you speak to any of the potential impacts to that statement and how this proposal doesn't create a substantial impact to that?
Well, with regard to, it starts with dealing with the preserve and enhance the suburban character, right? Is that right?
That's correct. Goal number 1. That's correct. And I just read from
right. The next part, so in terms of zone districts and use, the use obviously is consistent at single-family homes. We would comply with all setbacks, coverage standards, heights, everything else in terms of the size of the buildings proposed. The lot sizes would be consistent in terms of complying with the minimum required and being in the rough range of what's in the vicinity, and the intensity of use likewise. So as far as existing neighborhood development patterns, again, I think, in my view, reviewing this the immediate, let's forget about even the further out area, but the immediate area, you have a pattern that is irregular, that has orientations of houses that are not, in one direction or the other. You have an area here which can accommodate different types of arrangements and locations of houses on properties. And then good design practices, that's more subjective, certainly. That might be the one where, again, the board's raised some concerns, but I think that given you have the exact same situation and the neighboring, two properties over, or one property over from this one, as well as elsewhere in the vicinity, it'd be a very similar situation to what exists today. So as far as substantial impact, again, most sections of Allendale, I would agree. If I were to look at it, you probably would not be able to say the same. I wouldn't have the same conclusions. But given the specific factors of this particular block and the surrounding area, I think it's not a substantial negative impact.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Joe?
There was discussion earlier about prior existing third driveway on the property.
Yes.
Could you just speak to where that was and perhaps also any knowledge of history of the development of the current home on the lot, which sits over the property lines? We were just discussing those lots are consolidated, but those lots themselves, as they stand, are a little closer to the zoning inconsistency. I'm hoping that there's some evolution to how we got to one home on the property line and where maybe that third curb cut was and what the evolution was from a prior development pattern on the property.
Let's speak to the curb cuts first, the other, deferring the other one. So that is something in discussions with the applicant's representative. But I also confirmed that on Google Street View, which, again, I don't know if it's admissible to say, but looking back to 2008, you can see it clearly. There was a curb cut there, and then by the next available image from 2015, it no longer was. The curb was filled in. It was very close to the neighboring property with the group home to the south end. So I think 5 feet, 10 feet, somewhere maybe less than that. It was at that southern end of the property. There was a curb cut there for a driveway. But that, again, disappeared when the road was up, the curb was upgraded. As for the other question of the history, I think we have to, it'd be any hearsay to say how the house got there. I have some understanding from discussions. I don't want to put that in the record myself. It's the applicant to maybe answer that, maybe.
So the curb cut was just simply a curb cut, no existing driveway that was also removed?
I wasn't able to go back further than the 08 when there wasn't. I believe there's a driveway that was actually there, but there might have been one before. So again, that'd be something I'd have to rely on someone with more history.
It wasn't tied to access to the existing dwelling.
Again, I can't say that definitively. It just was verifying the condition. So we'll have to get the answer to the other question.
It's the only question I have right now. My lack of questions really is more struggling, I think, with the same thing the board is struggling with, is anticipating the potential development of the third lot in the rear, how it would be oriented, the feasibility of foundations and other things that not really within the realm of this application as it's in front of us. It's solely a subdivision.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Any more questions of the board before I open to the public?
I remember my question.
Yeah, good. I'm good.
I'm getting old, I think. I know you didn't testify to traffic flow, but as a professional planner, I mean, what's your feeling about an existing busy road with a very busy restaurant across the street, adding additional traffic coming out of I guess it would be the single driveway for 2 lots? Do you have any concerns with that at all? Because I'm assuming that the 15-foot would be a dual driveway for the rear lot and was that number 6?
My understanding there'd be you have 3 separate driveways, one for each of the lots. Either way, though, cars aren't they're going to have a turnaround. There's almost guaranteed there'll be a turnaround on the property, so it's a K-turn within, so you'd be pulling straight out. As far as the number of trips, again, I am not a traffic expert, but I've heard enough testimony on this and seen the IT manual on single-family homes. It's a very low number of hourly trips. So in terms of 2 lots, 1 lot, 2 lot, 3 lots, you're not having a substantial number that's going to affect traffic flow. It's a pretty busy road. We know that already.
Okay.
But as far as a safer condition, that is a benefit of trying to make sure the driveway has access for cars to pull out into the street as opposed to backing into it.
Okay. I appreciate your answer. it triggered one of those. So we had an application, I guess it was about a year ago or 2 years ago, with an existing flag lot, and the concern came up. So I want to ask your opinion and your feeling about deliveries, because this road, there really is nowhere to stop. You have UPS, FedEx, Amazon. What's the plan to get to the rear flag lot?
I haven't thought of that, but I guess, again, frankly, respectfully, I have to say a driveway for existing lots would have the same issue. It's not the flag lot that drives that issue. As far as parking getting a truck off the street, it would go into a driveway that's for that lot or any of the other lots nearby. I get the concern, and we can discuss that amongst the applicant side. But then, like, it'd be the same situation.
There's so many of them.
Well, there's that, and again, it's just a driveway's a driveway. Whether it's even if it was just like this one property or these two lots, you still could have a very deep driveway and have that same situation. Okay. I get it's a concern, but I think it'd be the same regardless of the.
So they bring drones. That's what it is, right? I guess one more final. So as a professional planner, if you weren't approached by your client and you looked at this, would you ever design a flag lot?
Well, first, I don't, it's not my realm of designing them per se, but to come up with ideas. Again, looking at the lot pattern there, frankly, it seems to make sense to me to fill in that section, to line up with the other rear lot lines along West Crescent. I can't. It's a hypothetical, obviously, but I'm just looking at, when I'm only involved because I've been hired, obviously. As far as the lot pattern, in my opinion, I'm speaking under oath here as a planner. Mm-hmm. That's how I view it, regardless of, who I'm representing. This is a unique section of the town, and the pattern, I think, would make sense to have the additional lot.
Okay. Well, I thank you for answering the question.
No problem.
Thanks, Bill. Go ahead.
You looked at put a third driveway back in? You looked at putting a third driveway back in?
Well, you need, right now there's none on the lot currently, right? I believe we have, I'm sorry. There's two on one lot currently, so you still have one lot that would need a driveway regardless.
You would get county approval.
Of course, yes. We've submitted to the county. Okay. Understood. Yeah, they'll have probably the same concerns we've heard about with regard to getting back out to the street, access, all that.
Has there been any response from county engineering on
we got an initial response. They were providing some additional information on that. We just got it 2 days.
Have they provided any guidance on offsets between driveways? Just the consideration of the variance that's in front of the board is particular to the lot widths, and those lot widths then tie themselves to the necessity for residential single-family driveways.
Right.
So that'll be a consideration of the county, as well as ours, for the proximity of those driveways, how they stack and how they relate to the intersection across the street, as well as the neighboring properties.
Obviously, we could share with the board any county report we get. Once we get the joint report of the county, which I think we've seen that anyway, but we'll provide it to it in Scarafalo when we receive it.
We'll just have one real quick response to that. You have two lots right to the north, are both 93 feet wide now, so it's literally the exact same width as we're proposing for two of those lots. So the driveway pattern would be obviously adding one more in the middle where it exists today, but the county will have the final say. But we understand that they'll have to have access to it.
Okay. There are no other board questions right at the moment. I'll open to the public. So again, with the caveat that the public comments are directed to the testimony you just heard. At the end, I'll open up for general public comment. Any members of the public wish to be heard? Hearing and seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can we have a 5-minute recess?
Sure. Yep. I think it'll be welcome for all of us.
I'm sure. There's a lot of water bottles up there.
I could use one.
All right, we're on a recess.
Yes.
Okay, we're back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we'd like to do at this time is we'd like to come back to the board next month on this application available. We want to try to maybe provide some more definitive answers, some of the questions the board had with regard to what this is totally done on this lot. The only question we understand is non-binding. The only question we would ask if we do this is, with regard to 6.01, that rear lot, is there an orientation this board would prefer to see as far as where the house would be, how the house would be situated, if a more definitive design is provided for the board? I know it's a non-binding question.
Right.
We're trying to give the board some more information.
Ed, do you have any thoughts on that?
If anything, it's trying to provide the orientation towards the garage, or towards the driveway, as it comes up that flag. Because the idea is to try to, in any lot, you have sort of semi-public portions of a home and then private.
Right.
So trying to place the private areas or privacy to the rear or to the larger portion of the lot itself.
So, Mr. Snipes, what you're referring to is maybe the house facing more towards the
north.
Am I right? Yeah, the north. Okay, understood. Okay. Okay. With that, I'd like, if the board is okay with that, I'd like to carry to the next available meeting, maybe submit some additional information to the board.
Any other suggestions, Ed, that we could?
We're open to anything
Yeah,
else,
I hear you, and I'm trying to facilitate that. I know you had so one of the questions you raised are like building lot areas or something like that. Maybe a little more definition on that, so we can at least get a feeling for what these might look like.
Building footprint.
Yeah.
Right. And sort of how that configuration would work in the driveway, so you would have a turnaround area, possibly to address the issue of delivery. If you had a UPS truck drive up there, who didn't make a picture, that sort of thing.
So Ed, I guess it
Could a fire police department make a K-turn is a bigger question, probably.
Not a
yeah.
So you're looking for a more definitive layout, more defined plan than what we're being provided here.
Exactly. Any other willing?
Do we want landscaping?
Any other willing conditions you might be able to detect to help address the issue of the concern of the flood? The details of landscaping and the buffer and and or certain setbacks. Possibility. For instance, I think, I don't speak for the board, there was concern raised about the 15-foot common lot line setback to the rear of someone's home.
Right.
Something like that could be further improved in some way. That's sometimes the condition that it will.
Ed, would it be appropriate at this time to also discuss how many trees would come down and then the wetlands in the area and the low elevations of the topography?
The tree removal is going to be a difficult one because of the grading that's necessary. And then once it gets past the board, then someone can come in the future and add a patio or a pool in the back of the home. But yeah, it does help to understand at least what's impacted by a building footprint. The wetland areas, I know it's been a visual survey of that area. I'm not a wetland expert. I'm just looking at the topography and knowing what occurred in the prior application. There is something with surface water here that is a concern. So,
well, there's also testimony that people used to ice skate there.
That was very difficult for me to understand, at least contextualize, because we were just having a sidebar discussion before. It's hard to know exactly where that was in the overall layout of things, whether or not that was replaced by Nadler Court in that area or what have you, where that prior area of water collection was at one time.
And it's also important to note that there's a rather large detention basin on Ivers right on the Calvary Church property. I mean, it's wet all the time.
Yeah, and I remember the testimony.
So there's water coming.
There was a lot of water coming.
Yeah.
And it was surprising to hear how much water was coming. So, if that's better understood.
And the topography would take it from north to south.
Yeah. So if we're gonna look at those concerns of potential high groundwater, things like that, looking at where you want to put your footprint that you propose to the board. Very conceptual field evaluation. So maybe isolated test pits, 2 or 3 of them in that footprint area to try to identify modeling of the soils to see where the seasonal high groundwater table is and see the feasibility of a foundation with a basement. So then you'd know if you're dealing with the construction of a home on slab or not, right, along with that orientation. And if that would limit the ability to orient and configure the home.
Thank you.
Any other members' comments?
You have an opinion.
Yeah.
Probably premature, but
Yeah.
no, I mean, I think the applicant has heard the general feelings of this board. So, and if they can come back with something better, we'll consider it.
That's what he does.
Okay. So you want to continue to the April meeting? Is that right? When's the April meeting?
April 19th.
Is the room on the agenda right now, Lynn?
We have one application, which hopefully won't take too long before them. And he would be next.
What is? Yeah, if you can't fly back from Barcelona or wherever it will be. Yeah, back to May. May.
Sure, May meeting.
May 17th.
So,
One big one.
So we're on. I'm not gonna be here anyway. All right, so I wouldn't think we have anything on May yet.
Nothing on May yet.
Okay. So they would be up. Now, depending if there's something really quick, I'll adjust on the fly.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no.
1-year extension.
well, I'd like to thank the board for their time.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you in, and
Good luck in Connecticut.
I was already told not to go for broke about 5 times before I left. So. No, not that. There you go.
I'll ask our attorney. It's probably premature to have general comments. They haven't wrapped up.
It's premature to have general comments, so there is a public portion, but there's no need. You probably want to wait until everything is put in.
Because it could change substantially.
Correct.
Can you sign this consent?
And no further notice is required?
Yeah, that's. I'll just ask our attorney. No further notice is required.
No, it's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so carries to May. I think we'd say after the president.
Yeah.
Okay. Give them a couple of minutes to pack up. We have one more resolution for this evening.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And the resolution of approval 2213 applicant Charles and Pamela Stock, 47 Homewood, lot
Block 507, Lot 4, and this is an application for an extension of time of an already approved application. What will we need to do? Just vote to?
Yeah, I mean, this is routinely granted, and there's no reason why it can't. So you could just make a motion, and
I think we had one last meeting or 2 meetings ago. We had
We do a voice vote, we have to vote.
no, you just make a motion, and then I would do.
Yeah,
It's a regular vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So
Okay, I'll accept the motion to approve the extension of time.
so moves Sirico.
Second.
I'll second.
Thanks, Melissa. Any discussion? Move to a roll call vote, please.
Board Member Bergen?
Yes.
Board Member Kistner?
Yes.
Councilwoman Delavatio?
Yes.
Board Member Gallo?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Sirico?
Yes.
Mayor Vicinski?
Yes.
Chairman Quinn?
Yes.
Alternate Rosala?
Yes.
Alternate Butler?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now it's open to the public for comment. Any general comments, not on the testimony we just heard, but in any other matters from the public? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Any other matters from council or the mayor? Anything to bring up for the board's consideration or? Anybody else?
No, I
Joe?
mean, from the land use committee standpoint, we're still making some recommended changes to some of the language in the code, just minor stuff. And I hope to, by next month's meeting, have my little, you want to call advisory sheet to applicants complete.
Okay, thank you.
That's my
Appreciate your work on that. The only other thing I would bring up, it's 2023. I think and Ed confirmed this, our master plan is good until 2025. So it may behoove us to budget some funds for next year to start.
2019, 2017.
17, yeah.
So therefore, it's 10 years.
It is, okay.
They changed that statute.
Okay.
So it's 2027.
Okay.
But realize the one thing I do want to bring to the board's attention is that if we do any future zone changes or adjustments to our land use plan, the municipal land use law has been changed that requires now for us to do what's called a hazards mitigation study, where we look at from a standpoint of climate change, what sort of impacts there are to the land. That's a mandatory requirement now if you are to a mountain zone. So that's something that you can go forward.
Like flooding? Like flooding?
Yes. Talked about flooding and what to avoid in flooded areas. Because there's obviously changes in the climate as a result of certain things, and so therefore there needs to be adjustments in what we anticipate. We wouldn't be necessarily saying that the floodplain would change, but that there may be impacts to the fringes of those floods. So that's something to keep.
Okay.
So Ed, could you please could you email me at my Allendale email some information on that so I can bring it up in the next committee meeting?
Absolutely. We actually have a little primer there.
Great. And potentially, I mean, the committee may want to ask you to attend and give some recommended suggestions or comments or something.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So Ed, just for clarification, with what you just raised, would that cause a reason to work on the master plan earlier?
It could. It's really affecting coastal communities.
Yeah.
And areas of tidal influence. But yet, in our areas, what we're seeing is certain zoning that might be in certain areas you may want to reconsider because of the nature of how rain events are changing or wind or storm events are changing. It also goes on to inform issues of emergency service. So, for instance, certain areas of the power is isolated for flooding. And so therefore, there are needs to make plans to move certain facilities that have, let's say you have a pump station, you have an evacuation route that needs to be anticipated, things of that nature that could come to the surface. We're doing one now for Westwood, I think for public, and things like that coming out in the conversation. Because it's a flooded area.
Westville Park.
And it also helps to maybe be a component if you are to additional funding for purchases.
trip because
Yeah.
the home for a common play as a result. It decided just to become, of course, that elevation I never see.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's nothing else. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Sirico.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.